get fucking crazy!
Hey guys, I'm back finally with another fly tying video. What's up? Today we're tying a very special fly of mine that's been probably one of my most productive patterns over the past 3 years. Yes, it's my take on the flash tail fly. Today you're going to see me tie this color, which is something of a herring imitation, but I like this pattern as a foundation where I can adjust the colors to suit different types of waters, different conditions, and it's been quite successful in a green version for late spring or even midsummer fishing. And also I'm tying it in a dark roach kind of version, which has also been quite successful. It's basically a deceiver fly, a lot of bucktail. It uses a flash for tail / wing instead of feathers, which you would use for a standard deceiver. I'm tying it articulated with quite a large head, which gives it all kinds of crazy movement once you strip it with short hard strips. And I also like to fish this pattern on a more sinking line, on the Big Daddy Sink 3 or even the Sink 5 line. And that way I can get it down quicker, but I can also fish it much faster without it ending up in the surface immediately. It's far from a very big fly. When I tie it, it usually ends up like this, you know, like 22-23 centimeters maximum. But I kind of like this size. I fish a lot with flies in this size. I mean, for the greater part of the season, this represents a good sized baitfish for the pike. Usually the size of fish that the pike will go on, regardless if it's a small pike or a big pike. So it could be a roach, it can be a perch, it can be a herring, basically any of the baitfish that can be found in quite large numbers. Most flies have an interesting story behind it. This one really doesn't, but I'll tell it to you anyway. The flash tail whistler, which is the original flash tail, was tied by American saltwater fly tyer Dan Blanton some 30 years ago. Very popular pattern among saltwater fishermen, and it found its way into freshwater fly fishing as well. I first came in contact with more of a pike adjusted version of it through my good friend Dougie in Scotland, who showed it to me, shared it on social media. And I also found there's quite a lot of reports from the UK in general that there have been a lot of pikes caught on a pike version of the flash tail. I tied that original fly, Dougie's version, and fished with it a few times, about 4 years ago. Didn't have that much success. Mostly it's because the original pattern, and Dougie's pattern as well, has big bead chain eyes. I've never been a real fan of pike flies with bead chain eyes or cones or whatever. I like them to be unweighted. Then I think about 3 years ago, I saw an articulated version tied by Norbert Renaud, pike fly fisherman and really good fly tyer who runs a fishing lodge in Ireland, and he tied an articulated version which I really liked. So I took off on that, did my own adjustments. There are similarities between Norbert's version and this, but I've replaced quite a few of the materials and I'm tying it slightly different. But I really want to give credit to Norbert, because that pattern is the source of this one. So this is more a variant of Norbert's pattern and Dougie's pattern, basically, than it is the original flash tail whistler. And I'm gonna leave a link in the description below here, not below the table, below this window. You get it. where you can find a tying video where Norbert ties his version of the articulated flash tail. So I guess that's it. Enough talking, let's start tying. Let's just quickly walk through the materials we're gonna need to tie this fly. The hook we're using is a Partridge Universal Predator X in size 4/0. In front of that is a 35mm articulated shank. Bucktail will be one of the main materials, and you're gonna see me mix blue and white bucktail for this fly. The mix of flash is up to you, but I'm using a mix of silver, pearl, blue with a touch of Chartreuse flash in there as well. The body is going to be made by pearl Baitfish emulator flash. On top of that there's going to be Chartreuse Nayat or craft fur. The head is made from purple and light blue optic fibers, but angel hair will do just fine. And we're gonna finish the fly with a couple of red 11mm living eyes. Let's get this show on the road, shall we? The hook I'm using is this Partridge Universal Predator X in size 4/0. And the thread I'm using is, as always, the Textreme Power Thread 100D. Start by adding some super glue to the shank of the hook. Attach your thread and then wind it back towards the hook bend. When it comes to the flash that I'm using for the tail here, you can go the easy way and basically use any flash you want, in any color you want. This fly right here would probably fish really well on an all silver flash tail as well. But since I'm a sucker for a well mixed flash blend, I'm gonna use a whole bunch of different flash variants here. But basically, it's silver, pearl and blue mixed together with just a few strands of green or chartreuse flash too. I can use quite a lot of flash here too, without it affecting the movement of the fly. Cut down the flash so the bundle is around 25 centimeters long, 30 at the maximum. Mix the flash together by rolling it between your fingers like this, then untangle it and then roll it again. And repeat this until you feel you have blended it all together nicely. Then tape at the end of the flash like this. Use a 60-40 spread of the flash and then tie it in at the back of the hook like this. I like to tie it in like this while holding it down. This ensures that the flash won't spread to the underside of the hook, which will make it harder for the flash to tangle around the hook when fishing. Now add a tiny drop of super glue to the thread and tie that down on the tying point. Then fold the flash back, but instead of tying it down, tie a small cone of thread in front of the flash bundle. This will give you a more loose tail, which will enhance movement. Mixing bucktail is really boring and tedious, but it makes for such a nice color effect that it's hard to achieve in any other way. I'm gonna mix blue and white bucktail for this fly. Start by cutting off the blue bucktail. Cut off a bunch big enough to be used as a single color itself. Then cut off an equally big bunch of white bucktail. Place the white bucktail on top of the blue on the table. Then divide it into two equally sized piles and put one of them to the side for now. take the other bucktail bundle and try rolling the blue bucktail around the white. And as you try this, repeatedly stack the ends by tapping it to the palm of your hand. It doesn't have to be super well mixed. As long as you don't end up with one color on each side of the fly, you're good. Place the bucktail around the shank of the hook in front of the flash bundle with the tips facing backwards. Add a couple of loose wraps of thread around the bucktail, then make sure it's spread around the hook shank before you tighten the thread and tie it down with quite a few hard turns of thread. Now, cut off the waist of the bucktail and secure it with some super glue. Pick up some Baitfish emulator flash in the color pearl. Tie this in front of the bucktail, then move your thread forward to point a couple of millimeters behind the hook eye. Wrap the body material forward in tight wraps until you reach the tying thread. Now, tie off the emulator flash here and secure it again with several turns of thread and some super glue. Pick up the bucktail you put aside earlier. Feel free to add more bucktail to it if you feel the bundle is a little too thin. Now repeat the same procedure with the bucktail as you did at the back. Which means, place it on the hook, add loose wraps, spread it, and then tighten. Now finish this section of the fly off by cutting the waist and secure it with super glue before cutting off the thread. Remove the fly from the vise and insert a 35mm articulated shank in the hook eye of the fly. Then insert the shank into the vise, add super glue, tie in your thread, while at the same time closing the shank like this. Now we're going to prepare 2 more bucktail bundles for the front section here. Again, Cut up a section of blue bucktail big enough to be used as a color by itself. Then cut an equal amount of white bucktail and place on top of the blue. Then split the bucktail into 2 bundles and put one to the side for now. Mix the blue and white in your hand and even out the ends. Tie it down at the back with the tips facing forward this time and take a sip of coffee. Now, cut off the waist of the bucktail here at the back. Then fold the bucktail back and tie down a cone of thread to press it back to an angle, reverse tie traditional style. On these flies I prefer a slightly bigger angle than on other types of flies, but it can also depend a little on the size of the bucktail I'm using. Prepare a small amount of Chartreuse Nayat or craft fur here. This will add a contrasting color, which will blend very nicely with the blue, white and silver once down in the water. Tie it down over the bucktail just in front of it. This will also weigh down the bucktail slightly, giving it the more correct angle. Cut off the waist of the Nayat and add a drop of super glue. Next step is optional. I'm not sure if it really makes any difference or not, but I like to add a small amount of emulator flash here, just to get an inner flash to the body. Tie it in front of the Nayat and wrap it 2 or 3 turns before tying it off. Again, we're going to repeat ourselves by adding the 4th and final bucktail color here. This will again be reverse tied like the previous one. So add it to the hook shank and add a few loose wraps before you tighten the thread and make sure it has spread around the entire hook shank. Tie it down firmly and cut off the waist carefully so you don't cut off any of the fibers of the emulator flash behind it. Now fold the bucktail back and once again tie a cone of thread in front of the bucktail here to force it backwards. And as always, try to do a longer cone to prevent the thread from collapsing on itself, which can happen if the cone of thread gets too steep. Cut off another piece of Chartreuse Nayat or craft fur and add on top of the bucktail once again. Then cut off the excess Nayat and add super glue to the tying point before combing it through to ensure that the materials have blended nicely with each other. Now to the head. The head is what gives much of the movement in this fly. It's big and flashy and will make the fly articulate in all sorts of ways. I like to use either optic fibers from foxy tails or traditional angel hair. If I use angel hair though, I tend to cut it down a little bit and work with tapering each bundle before tying it in. Work with the darker color on top and a lighter on the bottom of the shank to get a nice baitfish effect. Add the first bunch of light blue fibers on the underside of the shank and ensure that it doesn't spread to the top side. Tie it down firmly with 4 to 5 hard wraps. Then turn the fly over and add an equally large sized bunch of fibers in a dark blue color to the top of the fly. And while tying it down, make sure that it meets the light blue bunch of fibers on each side of the shank. Fold both bundles back and move forward with the thread. You don't have to force the fibers back with the thread cone here. Next bundle of fibers will force the first bunch back. So repeat the same steps again here. Dark blue on top, light blue on the underside. Tie both in with a few hard turns of thread, making sure they meet on each side. Fold back, move forward and tie a few more thread wraps in front. Last step is to add a third and final section of head, just behind the hook eye. Now, depending on how much room you have left here, you might need to adjust the amount of fibers that you can fit in here. Now fold back the entire head and I add quite a lot of super glue to the tying point, but also to the very front part of the head itself. Use a cloth and shape the head and wipe off unnecessary super glue here. This will both shape the head nicely, but will also secure the somewhat fragile optic fibers here. Finally, comb through the entire head thoroughly. I'm using the big 15mm living eyes from Flyman Company here. This fly really craves big eyes, and using red ones giving a nice contrast to it, I think. Use super glue gel that you add to the backside of the eye. Now don't press the eye down on the head. Instead, just place it there, carefully pressing enough just to make sure it doesn't slide off. Also, resist to put the eye right behind the hook eye. In order to keep the head big and bulky, it will work better if you place the eyes a little bit in from the hook eye. Place the second eye on the opposite side of the head. Now press the fly together from top to bottom, while at the same time pressing the eyes together. The aim here is to maintain a rather wide head, which gives so much of the movement and profile of this fly. Last thing that I like to do with these flies that has so much bucktail in them is to shape it under hot water. Basically take a long needle or similar and thread through the hook eye, and then hold it under hot water for a while to shape the bucktail colors. It's nice that I finally got use for my tube needle, isn't it? Then roll the fly up in tissue paper and leave it there to dry for a while. So, there you have it. All dried up, freshly tied, articulated flash tail variant, 700 teeth style. Hope you enjoyed the video today. I hope you learned something again. And by all means, tie your own version, change the colors, adjust it to your home waters, your fish, and I'm pretty sure you are going to enjoy fishing this fly, because I do. So, until next time. Oh God, here it comes! Do you like the Pike's tooth? Stay sharp. See ya!